Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope you all had a great holiday. Mine was pretty good as well. Today, we're reading 3 more cult stories. But before we start, what is your New Year's resolution? Comment down below and let me know. I'll be doing a giveaway of another sweatshirt on the 9th of January. So, be sure to enter. The link will be in the description down below. Now, with that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. The title explains it all. I'll explain everything to the best of my abilities. I'm not sure I'll make it out, so I am posting this story as a cautionary tale to others to hopefully prevent future deaths. It was in the middle of the night. I was in a voice chat with 4 of my friends. Since I was going to be home alone for the next week, I could stay up and have fun without any issues. Around 4 a.m., we had run out of things to talk about, so there was an uncomfortable silence for the next few minutes. I was just looking around my room when suddenly my phone turned on with a bright flash. I had gotten a notification telling me I had joined some random group I never heard about. After some initial confusion, I opened the app and saw that the one who invited me was one of my friends in the voice chat with me. I asked him why he did that, and he just said he was bored and thought it would be fun for us to raid some random group chats. We thought about it and decided to try it out. We invited the other 2 friends and all checked out the group. There were over 1,000 members, and right up until we joined, there was a conversation going on. They were talking about random stuff. The best way I could describe it was like a Facebook group full of middle-aged moms talking about boring stuff. There was a number of topics: the best detergent to remove carpet stains, auctions for phone cases and chargers, and a bunch of other usual stuff. There was nothing unusual going on, so we decided it was the perfect time to start. As teenagers, we began doing a number of weird stuff and sending dirty links to those dumb speed-up-your-PC tutorials. After a while of doing random shit to annoy the members, there was still nothing. The friend that joined first said right as he joined he saw that people were still typing, but after that, it all stopped. We saw that our attempt at a raid had failed, as we weren't getting any angry messages or anything along those lines. As we were about to call it quits, the friend that was the first to join gasped in excitement. He had gotten a private message from the owner of the group. We all got really excited and told him to start sharing his screen so we could watch along. He got a message from the owner that boiled down to a welcoming to the group. The owner saw all of our messages and asked what our intentions were. My friend then started role-playing as a grandmother in her late 80s. We all had a good laugh from it, when suddenly, within seconds of the last message he sent the owner, replied back with a screenshot. It was a screenshot taken from Google Maps. It was the front of his house. Although my friend was quiet as soon as he saw it, the rest of us started laughing our asses off. We reassured him it was Google Maps, so he wasn't there, obviously. Then, another message from the owner 10 seconds later. Parker Williams, 14 years old. Brian Sanders, 15 years old. William Aston, 14 years old. Adam Smith, 14 years old. He was reading all our private information back to us. At this point, nobody was laughing. Even though we knew we got doxxed, we still thought he wasn't going to do anything else. For the next minute, it was pure silence. All 3 of my friends went to check if their doors were locked, while I kept looking through the group messages. After 5 minutes, there was finally another message from some random person in the group. It was another screenshot from Google Maps. This time, it was my house. Then, another one of William's house. Then, Brian's house. I got another notification on my phone. The owner sent me a private message next. It was a 39-second video. The footage was really blurry, and the camera was shaking. Most of the sound was heavy breathing until the last 9 seconds. The camera zoomed in, and although blurry, I saw Parker. The owner was outside his house. I yelled at Parker, but no response. Brian and William came back, but not Parker. The group chat started getting flooded with messages like Parker has left. There were so many, I was convinced they were chatbots. I had gotten another picture from the owner. This one was really high quality, but the room was dark. The only light was from a computer monitor. In the corner, I saw something. It was on the ground with some sort of liquid next to it. Then, another picture closer to the thing on the ground. Then, another and another. Eventually, I could tell it was Parker. This wasn't a joke anymore. The group chat started getting spammed with pictures of mutilated bodies and gore. Then, more pictures depicting satanic rituals. All our face cams got turned on by themselves. In the background of Brian's room, I saw something moving. I asked him what it was, but he said he didn't see anything and yelled at me to not make stupid jokes like that. Before I could even say a word, I realized that behind him was a window. It was being opened by someone outside. I yelled at him to run, but by the time he realized what was going on, it was too late. He got pulled away into the darkness. For the next 3 minutes, we still heard faint screaming. It was only me and William left. I had enough and went to call for help. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. After a few seconds, someone finally picked up. 911, what's your emergency? Please, help, someone's breaking into my house. The sound of someone banging on my door startled me. It kept getting louder and louder. Then, the sound of shattering glass sent chills down my spine. I hid under my bed and tried to calm my breathing. Stay calm, sir. We need your address. I couldn't reply because I heard footsteps getting closer. Newcastle Street, Panama City, 8698. Please help. Help is on the way, sir. Where are you right now? I'm hiding under my bed. I may not be able to respond if he gets too close. For a moment, there was pure silence. No sounds at all. Then a brief and quiet sound of laughter. It got louder and louder. It was all coming from my phone. Soon enough, I could hear the same laugh coming from downstairs. I snuck my way into the closet. I hid inside there. As I'm writing this, I hear him getting closer. He went from room to room, and he's almost here. I woke up and started my day with a brisk cold shower. My feet traversed the oak staircase down to the kitchen, where I only had the time to scrounge together some eggs. I then headed to work. I got off my shift at 5, and then I made my way to get something to eat from Chick-fil-A. I got a chicken sandwich and a milkshake, and then I made my way home after that. I got home and let my dog out. I got out some leftovers from the other night to make dinner and loaded up my PC. I play a lot of video games to relax. I basically play in my free time, like before I go to bed. The next day, I only got called into work for a couple of hours, which was nice, because I was super tired. After I got home, I went up to my room to play some guitar and just jam out for a little bit. I got pretty bored of that soon, so I just turned my Xbox on in the living room and put my feet up to play my favorite game for a little while. It was getting pretty late by this point, so I threw a Netflix show on to fall asleep watching. It was around midnight at this point, and I was pretty sleepy. I think I dozed off pretty soon after that, but I was woken up by a little while later by some type of sound. I couldn't make out exactly what it was, because I was still half asleep, but it definitely woke me up. It was pretty loud, and I thought it came from out front of my house. It was pretty damn close anyway. It was like a light, high-pitched sound, almost like someone was playing a violin with a rusty piece of scrap metal outside of my window. I didn't really think much of it at the time. I was half asleep and I really didn't care at the time, so I just went back to bed. I woke up around 11 in the morning, and I felt like absolute shit. It felt like I was hungover, which was odd because I had nothing to drink the night before. I had a horrible headache and a slight ringing in my ear. I went to the medicine cabinet, grabbed 2 Tylenol out of the bottle, and took them. A little while after that, my headache started to calm down, and the ringing eventually stopped. I had to have had 2 cups of coffee at this point, not only because I felt awful, but because I'm definitely a coffee addict. There's no doubt about it. I'm a total caffeine fiend, because it really helps me focus. Thankfully, I wasn't scheduled to work until later that day, but I was going to see how I felt about working later. I was mostly waiting to see if I was even up for it. Something about that day just felt off, as if some presence was watching my routines as a play upon a stage. I was alone, except for Gracie, but it felt like I was still being watched. I was restless, and I just didn't want to be in my house anymore. I thought that maybe it was because I wasn't feeling good earlier, so I thought maybe some fresh air would do me some good. I got the dog's leash, loaded us up in the car, and took my Gracie for a walk at the park. I thought once I got back, I would feel better from just getting some fresh air. We walked in the park for almost an hour, and while I was there, I discovered something strange. As I was walking Gracie on a path in the woods which I hadn't tread recently, but could remember taking in the near distant past, all of a sudden, my dog started freaking out and growling to the left of me. I looked over to see what she was barking at, but I couldn't see anything. It was totally out of character for her, as I had never seen her act so defensively before. I was sure that she had definitely either seen or could sense something out there that I couldn't. This piqued my curiosity, so I decided to investigate. I walked off the path, letting her lead me. Gracie was pulling the leash so hard I tripped a couple of times. She was choking herself just trying to get there. I was walking for what seemed to be forever, until we finally got to where she was leading me. It was in the middle of the woods, but above me was a huge, circular clearing in the trees, which was super random, because there were trees all around except in this one circle. On the ground, there was nothing but grass, but it was growing in a very strange way. In this almost hexagonal-shaped area, it didn't look very natural at all, and my dog was now ripping up the grass, digging for something. There was something under there, and she was going to find it. Everything that came next happened so fast. Gracie had dug up what looked like a bone. It was this dirty, yellowish-white stick, and I grabbed it out of Gracie's mouth. I then examined it further, and then realized maggots were festering inside, surely making a meal of whatever marrow was left. One even crawled into my hand, and at that point, I did my best Derek Jeter impression and threw the bone halfway across the field. I yelled at Gracie not to go after it. I then started jogging back to the path, where Gracie and I ran straight back to my car, and drove home. I was just disgusted at what I saw, but I was also very curious about why there was a relatively large bone buried in the woods. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning. I didn't get much sleep that night because I was trying to understand it all. The odd circle in the middle of the woods with no trees in that one area. The bone that belonged to a large animal that was also buried. I wanted to go back, and maybe do a little investigating so I could really see what was happening. It was around 1 in the morning at the time, and I heard a large whoosh come over my house, almost like an airplane flying over. You know how if you stand on the ground and a jet flies by flying low? Well, that was the sound that came over my house. I was startled from brainstorming ideas of what could be out in the woods when the loud sound went over my house. I got right up without blinking an eye and headed downstairs, hopped into my car, and flew down the street towards the park. I was 2 streets away from the park at a stop sign when I saw something in the air above the woods. It looked large and black, and I couldn't make out many details, but there was a light underneath, and it was shining down on something I couldn't quite see. I quickly made my way towards it, trying to keep my eye on it while driving at the same time. Nobody was out this late at night, and the street was mostly dark with a few flickering streetlights. I parked my car in the park's parking lot and got out. I didn't have much on me except my phone, which I had in hand, and I turned the flashlight app on to see by. I was on the same path I was on earlier, and all of a sudden, I started hearing this chanting. It almost sounded like some kind of ritual chant, like the kind those Gregorian monks do, but it sounded oddly pleasant. The chant almost sounded like a choir filled with beautiful voices. I didn't want to disturb whoever was making the sound, and I didn't know what else to do. So, forgetting why I was even there in the first place, I started to head back. I had gotten back to my car when I saw that thing in the sky again. It was almost hovering over me for a second, and the next, when I looked back up at it, it just disappeared. It was there 1 second, and gone the next. It was like something out of a movie. but this was real and right in front of my face. I hopped in my car and quickly sped off. I got to my house and went right to my bed. I made sure all my doors were locked first though, because I was pretty frightened. I had no idea what I had seen, so I tried forgetting about it and just falling asleep. I don't know how much sleep I got that night, but I woke up around 1 a.m. Knowing I wouldn't be getting any more sleep anyway, I went online. I was researching the flying thing I saw in the sky to see if anyone saw the same thing. I quickly realized that what I saw that night was a UFO. The way it acted and how it defied physics added up. It hovered without moving, and then flew away within microseconds. No man-made thing can do what that thing did. My brain then sparked to the second thing I witnessed, the chanting. I messaged a couple of my online buddies about what I saw, and they suggested that it was some type of cult. I told them about how I saw the circle in the middle of the woods, and the hexagon-shaped grassy area, and they sent me this article on a nearby cult ritual that took place back in the 80s, where they sacrificed a little boy. It was all over the paper back then, and whispered about around town. If you lived here, you would know about the story. There was speculation about if this cult was still functioning, or if it was still even around today. Most people thought that all the members had either died or moved on. So, I was sitting here thinking to myself about how I just found the strange cult that nobody knows about. Now, I really wondered if the UFO was connected to this strange cult. I tried to go about my day like usual, went grocery shopping and ran a couple other errands. While I was out, I saw this really cool laser, which was green, like the kind of tactical laser they use in the military. I got it for around $50, because I'm into that type of weird stuff. I wanted to use it next time I went out to explore the woods, and maybe to mess around with a couple of my neighbors. Nothing odd happened that week until Saturday. This is when I saw something I never should have seen. It was 3 a.m. on Saturday. The moon was full and the wackos were out. You know what they say about the full moon and the crazies? Well, tonight, that was the truth. I couldn't help myself but to explore the dark and spooky woods. I really wanted to know where that beautiful chant was coming from. The way I would describe it would almost be like a siren's calling. A siren is a mythical creature that would lure in unknowing sailors to their death by their chanting song. It was like this, but a choir, all in unison, together chanting the song. I still can't describe it in words, but I need to find the source of it, and I was going to. So, I began walking around on and off the path until I came across where I witnessed it last. I saw a dimly lit flame far ahead of me in the woods. I couldn't make out much around it though, because of the trees and brush around me. I started to make my way over to it, watching my steps so I wouldn't alert anyone to my presence. If I was going to see what was happening, I would need to do it secretly and silently. I thought now what I was getting myself into when reading those articles online. This was a cult where they did rituals to someone, or something, for God knows what reason. I could feel my adrenaline start kicking in, just thinking about what I might see. For me, the danger just added to my excitement. It was like a key to my own personal door of blissfulness. I believed that once you aren't afraid of death and the unknown, then you can unlock the real joy of life. Some might say I am a thrill seeker, but I like to call it my addiction. When I am in a situation I shouldn't be in, I feel as if I am whole. I break through a threshold of right and wrong, and the reward is the stimulation to my mind. It might sound a bit crazy to you, but aren't we all a bit crazy in some ways? Anyways, as I was creeping up on this fire, I saw multiple people around it. I ducked down in the brush, trying to camouflage myself as best I could. I was glad that I had thought to wear dark clothes that night. It really helped me to camouflage myself better in the dark woods. I started to listen to what these people were saying. I was probably 30 yards away at this point. They began to chant that song again, and it filled the air with an almost joyous feeling. I felt good just listening to it. It wasn't scary, and it didn't make me feel like I was in danger. I was just oddly at peace. I continued to watch to see what they were going to do next. They started to switch from the chant to a constant repetition of this one word, which seemed to be in some type of possible ancient language I didn't recognize. They repeated this one word over and over again. I had no clue what would happen next, but then they doused the fire in gasoline, shooting embers up into the moonlit sky. All of a sudden, I remember seeing someone bring some type of squealing animal out. The creature had to be in pain because of the cries that this animal was making. They laid it out on the ground and sprinkled it with some sort of dust while continuing the chanting. I saw one of the members take a large knife that was glowing red from the fire. He took the knife and sank it right into the animal's neck, spewing blood everywhere as the poor thing cried out one last time. They took the lifeless corpse of the animal and threw it into the raging fire in the middle of the circle. It caught pretty quickly, and suddenly a putrid smell rushed my nose. It was the smell of rotting flesh being boiled. They had all began to chant louder and louder, all rising up, stretching their arms and lifting their hands to the sky like they were all reaching for something. I was in shock of what I just saw, but I wasn't scared. My adrenaline now was pumping so fast through my veins I could feel it. I knew I had to get out of there before the sunrise, which would be soon. It was almost 5 a.m. at this point. The sun would be coming up and revealing my position within the hour. Out of nowhere, they all stopped, and that made me nervous. It was dead quiet to the point where you could hear a pin drop. I heard distant birds chirping and a couple crickets here and there. I then felt something slither across my leg. This made me jump a little, because I wasn't too fond of snakes, but I knew I still needed to remain calm. As I moved my leg, a branch cracked under me. At this point, it was still dead quiet, and I knew someone had to have heard that. I looked up towards where the ritual was taking place. I peeked my head over the brush and saw someone looking directly at me. Then, as if the rest of the world quit existing, it was me and this cult member, eye to eye, about 30 yards apart. There were so many thoughts going through my mind at that time, but the one that stood out the most was run. I stood up and with my adrenaline-pumped legs, ran as fast as I could back to the path. I was pretty muddy from laying down in the dirt for the last hour, and I looked like shit. I wanted to look back to see if anyone was chasing after me, but I was too focused on getting to my car and getting the hell out of the park. I got back to my car, clicking the unlock button on my keys multiple times before it opened, and finally, I got in the driver's seat. I locked my doors and turned the engine on. It was still fairly dark out at this time, and my car lights were on. The lights were pointed right towards where I just ran from. It was foggy, but I could make out an abnormally tall man with some sort of mask on from the distance. The man was standing on the path, holding something in his hands. I tried making out what it was, and it looked like it could be a baseball bat with nails in it. I put my car in reverse, sped out of there, trying to make sense of what just happened. The rest of the day, I just sat in bed, thinking. I sat there for hours, just trying to understand what I saw. I knew that I saw a cult doing a ritual. I wondered what the man would have done to me if he ever caught up to me. Knowing me, despite the events that happened that night, it wouldn't stop me from exploring even more. That was yesterday. I went to Walmart today and bought some motion-activated cameras and some other kinds of trail cameras, like the kind that hunters use, that take pictures every few minutes. They also have night vision too. All the videos and pictures that are taken on these cameras will be sent directly to my phone. I plan on setting these cameras up where the ritual happened. There is a chance I'll get nothing back because the cultists might go somewhere else. Otherwise, I plan to record them doing whatever it was they were doing. Either way, I'm planning on setting these up later today while it's lights out, and will report back with what I get. Update. I just got back from setting everything up, and everything is good to go. I can access the live feed from my cell phone, which is definitely going to come in handy. I also went back to where Gracie found that bone to see if I could find anything else. The last time I was there with my dog, I ran off in a hurry. While I was looking around, I found a piece of paper that was pretty ripped up laying on the ground. It was pinned down under this rock, so it wouldn't blow away from the wind. I started to try and make out what was written on it. I could only make out a few sentences. Here is what it said. The blood of the little one is forever sacred. We bless our sacrifice with the ashes of our past. Unison is all and all is forever. There was this ancient language, and I tried looking up what it meant. After a few Google searches, I discovered that it was in Greek, and it meant Hail Leader, as in the one who they sacrificed to. I found it amusing that the language they were using was Greek. I reasoned that this cult must stem back all the way to ancient Greece. It was around 9 p.m. now, and I was preparing myself for the night. Before I had left the woods, I made sure that when I walked in front of where I placed the cameras, that they would all take my picture. The cameras worked just like they should, with very high quality pictures. The only thing I was worried about was if I would be able to make out any pictures that were taken in the dark. There was a night vision mode on the cameras, so I hoped that it doesn't make the quality unbearable. I bought this one specific camera that had really high-tech thermal lenses. It takes a picture if it detects body heat, so nothing that is warm-blooded could pass by it without getting their picture taken. For what this whole situation is, I think I'm prepared pretty well. I don't really have a plan B if something goes wrong, so I guess I'll keep this post saved on my computer. This way, if something bad happens to me, or I go missing, then whoever finds this will know what was happening at the time. I made myself some dinner, and put some Netflix on to make time go by faster, until it was time to leave. I planned on leaving around 2 a.m., and to be near the park just watching the cameras on my phone. I was a decently patient person, so I could sit there for hours and wait until something happens. After watching a couple episodes of my favorite show, I got up to go to the bathroom. My bathroom has a window that you can see my backyard from. I was just doing my business when I thought I heard something rustling around out back. I peeked through the blinds from my bathroom and didn't see anyone. I washed my hands and headed downstairs to turn the outside lights on. I had a way better angle now to view the whole backyard. I turned the lights on, but didn't see anything either. I started to chalk it up to my mind just playing dumb tricks on me because of what I would be doing that night. I turned the lights back off, and all of a sudden, I could see the shadowy figure that was far back at the edge of my fence. It was just standing there, apparently doing nothing. I closed my eyes, holding them shut for a long moment before I opened them again, because maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. When I opened my eyes again, it was still there. The figure was solid black and unusually tall. I would say it had to be around 7 feet tall. I turned my lights back on, and it instantly disappeared again. It was almost 1 a.m. at this point, but I felt compelled to leave early. I made sure all my doors were locked and headed to my car. Tonight was just getting started. I got into my car, put the keys into the ignition, and started it, and pulled out of my driveway. I headed to the parking lot of the closed coffee shop that was nearby to the woods. I turned my car off and plugged my phone in to charge it. I loaded up my camera app to see what was currently going on, and there was nothing. What a surprise, I thought. I wasn't too sure how long I waited, but it had to have been a few hours before something caught my interest. A notification popped up saying Camera 1 has activity. Click here for details. I clicked the notification and pulled the feed up. I couldn't make anything out, so I turned the night vision mode on. As I turned this mode on, I could see to the far left of the screen 2 tiny, glowing eyes. I tried to zoom in, but it wouldn't let me. I swiped over to my other camera to try and make sense of what I was seeing. Camera 2 was the same, but now there was double the eyes. You know how a cat's eyes glow in the dark? Well, it was the same thing, but had to have been 7 feet in the air. I went to the third camera, and I could finally make out a person. They had to be wearing some kind of dark-colored robe, because I couldn't make out any features on it. It also had that weird mask on. It appeared to be some type of animal skull with sticks coming out of it. This thing was wearing an animal skull on its head. Then, I remembered I had my thermal camera. I quickly pulled up the video feed and clicked the scan area option. This was the oddest thing, because it should have lit up like a Christmas tree in the shades of red. It was actually quite the opposite. These things were cold as ice. No high temperatures were recorded. I only knew where they were because their bodies were outlined in the cool blue color for the temperatures 40 degrees and below. As I was focusing on this, something else caught my eye. The temperature meter lit up in the middle of the circle. It was the fire, and the temperature meter was the highest it could get. The ritual was beginning. This didn't make any sense at all. If they were human, it would be reading above 98 degrees. But those things in the dark robes were colder than ice. The meter doesn't read below 40 degrees, so I can only assume they had ice water for blood. I looked at the clock and saw that it was 4 a.m. The shit was now getting real. My curiosity was beyond peaked at this point. Then, out of nowhere, something lit up the camera with a bright light. I couldn't see anything but this large, super bright light. I switched over to my thermal camera to see what it was reading, above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This was some crazy shit. The huge light, which I still have no clue as to where it came from, was hotter than fire. I had only been looking at this light for a minute when I started to get error warnings from the app. The errors read, "Camera non-functional, please reset." I was curious now that all my cameras weren't working because of the heat. This huge-ass light from the sky melted my cameras, and somehow, these people are still alive? It was impossible. It had to be a mistake of some kind, an equipment malfunction of some kind maybe, because if this light was hotter than fire, then shouldn't it kill those things? I was on my way over to the park, and that's when it hit me. The light was from the UFO I saw earlier in the week. That was the only explanation I could come up with. I just got into the park and parked my car in the lot. I felt the adrenaline starting to slowly course its way through my body. I was moments away from seeing what was going on in the middle of the woods. I was walking on the path, and I slowly began to see this very bright, exposing light. It looked like a spotlight, but was shining directly in my face. I was so fascinated and curious as hell to see what it was. It was still hovering over where the ritual was taking place. I crept my way down into the brush, and that's when I saw him. He was wearing this dark, raggy-looking robe, that large animal skull mask on his head, and had bright, blue, piercing eyes. When I tell you those eyes stared through your soul, I mean it. It was obvious to me that these cult members weren't human. The way they did everything so in unison, without missing a beat, the way they walked with their long legs. Most of the members were at least 7 feet tall or so. The tallest one was probably 8 feet, and these long, inhuman arms, they were way more stretched and morphed, was unnerving. I saw him bend down, and it almost looked like he broke his arm, and then snapped it back into place without flinching. I found all of this absolutely fascinating. Every bit of it pumped more adrenaline through my veins and into my brain. I was feeling amazing, but also killer focused. I was now on task to get a picture of this UFO. I took my phone out and brought the camera app up. I didn't blink once and zoomed in on the light. The damn light was so bright it wouldn't focus for 1 second. I held the focus to sustain it, and it started to clear at this point when I saw him. He looked over towards me and didn't move. He just stood there without breathing, staring at me. This thing, this monstrosity, and not even 20 feet away from me, was staring right through me with those piercing, blue, unnatural eyes. I had no clue what to do at this point, so I took the picture and bolted. When I thought I couldn't have ran faster, I was overcome by my fight or flight instinct of I know I am going to die, and I ran faster than ever. I began to hear multiple voices of them yelling in this deep, ancient dialect. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before. I was running on the path at this point when I felt this horrible stomach cramp. The cramp was accompanied by the familiar piercing headache and a dull ringing in my ears. My survival instincts kicked in to overdrive, screaming at me to get to my car. A few blurry moments later, and I got back to the parking lot. I already had my car unlocked, so I jumped in, turned the engine on, faster than I had ever had before. I got out of there, leaving skid marks behind me. And then, while I was driving down the road, I felt an intense sense of relief and safety. I was safe, for now at least. But that is it, isn't it? I have no clue whether or not I'll be alive in the next few days. I've decided to put my house up for sale and legally change my name. I've already quit my job, and I'm ready to leave this shitty town behind. I'll be posting this document of my experience with this cult. I just hope they don't find me. Or maybe they already have. The reason I say that is because I've had some weird shit happen to me recently. While I was going to my local grocery store the other day, I saw something strange. I was coming out of the store while looking at my phone, and all of a sudden, it was a notification from my camera app. You see, I obviously never went back there. I thought that the notification had to be a glitch, since I knew the damn cameras were apparently damaged. It said, "Camera 1 has activity. Click here for details." I clicked on it, and what I saw shocked me. It was a child, all alone, with only a hat on his head. Then, one of those things wearing a dark robe came over, blocking the camera's view. I couldn't see what was happening, because he was standing in front of it at this point. My stomach sank just thinking about what I was about to witness. But then, it just went black. The screen cut out, and that damn message popped up. "Camera non-functional, please reset." What happened next is why I am leaving town and never coming back. I had begun to feel this weight fall over my chest, like an elephant was sitting on me. Then, that ringing in my ear started again, just like the night I ran away from that thing. I then saw my phone start to glitch out, and it started to get extremely hot. I mean, like when you leave it in the sun all day hot. It began giving a message saying, "High temperature alert, please let phone cool before using again." I almost couldn't hold it because it was that hot. I just put it in my pocket thinking it was just a stupid glitch. Then my phone began playing a song at full volume. It was the beautiful song that the cult members were chanting in the woods. I neither had made a recording of their chant, nor did I find it anywhere on the web. My phone had accessed this audio from some external source, but only God knows where it came from. This is what made me tip. This was the last straw for me, and I was no longer curious about this screwed up ancient extraterrestrial cult. I shut my phone off and threw it in the grocery store trash can. I'm writing all this on my new phone while sitting on a plane awaiting takeoff. I got a solid cash offer on my house, and we settled on a very lush price. So Gracie and I are gone. I'll probably wind up somewhere in Europe. Maybe I'll own a business, like a vineyard off the Bay of Naples. Maybe I'll find something in the Maldives Islands right off the coast of India. I will tell you this much, whoever may be reading this, I'm about to fly somewhere I can hopefully begin a new life, without this constant fear of these inhumane things that are lurking in your town. I saw something I shouldn't have seen, and maybe went too far exploring it. I've experienced a lot in a life, and I don't care what people say. I know I'm not in control of what happens next, and I've already accepted it. I'll either eventually live out my life somewhere nice and warm, or these supernatural things will find me and end my life one day. I wish I still had that picture I had taken as proof, but the light had melted the camera lens on my now discarded previous phone, and the picture had ended up a distorted mess anyway. I don't want to know how they might end me, or what they might do to me. I just hope this message, this warning, gets out to the public. There are otherworldly things out there. Whether or not you believe it, it's real, and I have seen it with my very own eyes. Goodbye now, and wish me luck on wherever I wind up going. Remember to be safe out there, and live life to its fullest, because you never know what could be out there, just waiting for you. T. I live in a small but lively town in Massachusetts. Its local legends have fueled my love affair with the paranormal. It's a subject that fascinates me to this day. Coupled with insomnia, this passion led me to spend many a nights at a nearby cemetery, hoping to see a ghostly apparition while walking through to pass the time. The outings were unfruitful, void of all activity, supernatural or otherwise. My dream of stealing a glimpse at what comes after eventually subsided, but I continued to visit the graves. It was a place where I could collect my thoughts when sleep eluded me. One night, however, something changed. It was a dark spring evening, and I was bored. I couldn't sleep, and felt the need to do something outdoors in the cool night air. As it so often did, the local graveyard called out to me. I obliged, unable to resist the allure of its calming nature. Sometimes, I was even tempted to set up camp there and sleep amongst the dead. Knowing this would be frowned upon, and perhaps morbid, I settled for my walks. They were enough to make me at least somewhat weary by night's end. After a couple hours there, I decided on one last stroll along the headstones in an attempt to become tired before heading home. Upon starting my walk, I noticed something. There was a light on in the groundskeeper's shack. It wasn't like him to be working so late. This wasn't completely out of the ordinary until you factored in the large, gaping hole nearby, big enough for several caskets. It was a miracle I hadn't fallen into it earlier in the night. Curious as to what the old man was up to, I crept over to the shack, making my way to the busted window on its side. What I saw was strange. Inside were 9 men wearing tattered, blue shrouds, partaking in a makeshift feast. The main course was an oily red stew, with a horrific smell that permeated the shack's walls and ventured up my nasal passages, tempting me to gag. The men winced when putting it to their lips, save for 3, a tall man at the end of the table, and the 2 sat beside him. When the feast was over, this tall figure stood up and addressed the room. "Hello, newcomers. I hope dinner has been to your liking." He spoke with a firm voice. It resonated throughout the shack and beckoned even me to listen. "Now that our bellies are full, Elijah and I will explain the rules of your impending trial." I listened closely. It seemed the men in the shack were part of a collective known as the Bloodlights. The trial the tall men spoke of was something akin to a medieval gladiator sport used to initiate new members. I listened on as Elijah divulged the game's inner workings, fearful but curious. 2 teams were to disperse to opposite ends of the cemetery, each consisting of 4 members, 3 blood runners and 1 blood baron. The initiates would be the runners, and the tall men's henchmen would act as barons. There was one more participant to be discussed, the tall man himself. He was the Bloodkeeper. Though not on either team, he was the most crucial facet of the game. He kept and guarded what was referred to as the blood. I gathered that this referred to the red amulet hanging from the Keeper's neck, as he firmly clasped it every time the word blood was uttered. The job of the runners was to retrieve the blood from the Keeper. The barons acted as a council, overseeing each team and helping where needed. After Elijah finished his lecture, the Bloodkeeper took over. "With every wound, there is blood. With every drop of blood, there is solace. Without death, there can be no light." The Keeper opened a large cupboard in the corner of the shack, revealing a woman, bound and gagged, futilely attempting to cry out for help. My heart sank. This was not your normal, run-of-the-mill cult ritual. I had to find help. But what if they heard me? Unable to nail down my next course of action, I was immobile and frozen in fear. The Bloodkeeper continued. "The light of the blood can only be seen in death." Pulling a large red dagger out from his cloak, he grabbed the woman and plunged it into her gut. I watched in horror as the life left her eyes. She began to shriek, but was soon cut off by a cut to the chest, followed by a final blow to her neck. I was mortified. After throwing his kill to the floor, the Keeper pulled out 3 vials, filling each of them with the blood that dripped from his blade. This was the blood the runners were after, not the amulet. "This is all the blood I have to offer. That gives, at most, 3 of you the opportunity to become Bloodlights. And remember, you are being watched. Those who fail to collect must be disposed of. The same goes for any outsider you encounter. Corpses are to be thrown in the pit." Dear God, I was truly in danger. That's what the hole nearby was for? Perfect hiding spot for a mass grave. "You must stop at nothing to obtain one of these vials. All others will be sacrificed. Your thirst for blood must be as strong as your will to live." The men exited the shack and began the trial. I scurried off, silently to the wooded part of the graveyard and hid behind a large tree, not wanting to end up like that poor woman. I just needed an opening to escape without being noticed. Glancing out at the cemetery, I saw a runner knelt before a grave, eyes closed. I assumed this was a requirement before the game commenced. A perfect chance for me to make a run for it. "Let's begin the trial." The Bloodkeeper's voice echoed through the trees before I could even make a single step towards my safety. My survival still hung in the balance. using a moonlight pool of water by my feet as a reflective surface. I watched as Elijah and 3 runners strategized just 10 yards from my position. My heart was pounding so hard, I was worried they would hear it. Between the beating in my chest and the conspiring whispers that filled the forest, my ears were consumed with an unsettling symphony of torture. Just when I couldn't bear another moment, silence cut through the brisk night air like the keeper's dagger piercing that woman's skin. A chill then burrowed into my spine. The puddle's reflection bore no cloaked figures. Peering out from behind the tree confirmed that they were gone, or at least nowhere to be seen. This was my chance. Looking off into the distance, I saw a tomb by the main road, maybe 100 yards away. It would provide the perfect cover to escape towards civilization, but there was no way I could waltz over there without being seen. The woods wrapped around the cemetery, so running from tree to tree would strengthen my odds of survival. I took a deep breath and braced myself. Without so much as a second thought, I dashed to the next tree on the path to safety and took cover. I then gathered my wits and surveyed my surroundings. No cloaks in sight. I sprinted to the next tree and took another glimpse out of the world. The coast was still clear. As I was about to take off in the direction of my next hiding spot, panic set in as my feet inexplicably left solid ground. My blood ran cold as I was lifted into the air by some unseen force. The next thing I knew, my body was hoisted up and placed atop a tree branch. There, I was greeted by an unnerving sight of my captor, a blood runner. I didn't scream or try to get away. It would be no use. I sat there in terror and exhaled what I thought would be my last breath. Instead of gutting me, the man spoke. "What's your name?" I was too shocked to respond. "Come on now. Who are you?" He spoke, clearer this time, revealing a slight English accent. "Look, I noticed you at the window over there, eavesdropping. If I wanted you dead, I could have killed you then. I want you to help me." "Help you?" I asked. "Yes, I'm going to use you to my advantage. I take it you know what we're doing here, and you know the rules of the game?" I nodded slowly, still shook. "Good. With you, I may be able to turn the tables and get the upper hand." I was frightened, but I calmed down enough to focus on the runner's plan. "See that tomb over there? That's where the Bloodkeeper is." My stomach turned. To think, this guy may have just saved my life. "I need you to go over to the tomb and open the door slowly. The Bloodkeeper will surely take a swing at you. Just as he's about to end your life, I'll swoop in and end his." "But why?" I asked. "That's not part of the game." "Right you are. You need not concern yourself with the why. Just know, if you don't do as I say, I will kill you myself. Now get going." The man gave me his cloak for protection and pushed me out of the tree. I didn't want to risk facing the Bloodkeeper, but I didn't want to perish at the runner's hands either. My fear of dying kept me from deviating. I again ran from tree to tree, eventually making it to my destination, the stench of bloodshed wafting through the air as runners fought for control of the field. With my back pressed to the cold aged stone and pull to escape grew. The main road was within reach, but the thought quickly subsided. I was far too worried the Englishman would catch up with me and take his price. He was able to climb a tree and lift my weight into it without a sound. It was clear he possessed the agility and stealth needed to take me by surprise during a haphazard run for the hills. I sighed in defeat, knowing that, one way or another, I would probably die that night. Mustering up every bit of courage I had left, I crept around the tomb and faced its door. My shaking hands reached for the rusted handle and pulled it towards me. Before its hinges could even creak at the motion, the door burst open, pushed from within. The force knocked me over, my head connecting with the unforgiving ground. The moments that came after remained fuzzy. The Bloodkeeper towered over me, half of his body in shadow, and the other soaked in moonlight. A vision of death there to steal the blood from my racing heart. My eyes grew weary and shut for an instant before opening to see another figure. I couldn't make out who was who in my dazed state, but one attacked the other, completely overpowering him. The prey in his scuffle fell to his knee before landing face first into the cold cemetery soil. The familiar sound of metal colliding with flesh rang through the air as the victor saw to it that his job was done. I prayed it was the Bloodkeeper being torn apart, otherwise I was gone. My eyes shut again before unconsciousness finally took a hold. "Hey, are you alright?" I heard an old man's voice as I came to. "Are you okay?" I opened my eyes to see who it was. The groundskeeper stood over me, holding a lantern to my face. "What? How? Where are they? Where's who?" he asked. "You don't understand. I should be dead." The groundskeeper stared at me, confused, and then smiled. "Come on, you'll catch a cold out here." The groundskeeper, who I now know to be Pete, invited me into his shack. He prepared some food and tossed me a blanket to keep warm. Thankful and in need of an ear to fill, I told him everything, despite how I knew it would sound. I described the men by their given titles, but Pete seemed to know who I was talking about. "Sounds like you had a run-in with the Bloodkeeper." "That's him? How do you know?" "His spirit has been visiting these grounds for, well, over 100 years now, I suppose." His spirit? Incredible. It was all a haunting. Something I always thought I wanted to experience firsthand. Pete and I talked for a long while. He knew all about the Bloodlights and their dastardly deeds. Apparently, they were a sadistic cult that formed in the 1800s, terrorizing the local community. Each Bloodlight initiation brought with it more disappearances. They used the cemetery as a space for their trials, burying casualties and sacrifices at the end of every night. After all, who would look for the bodies in a graveyard? Over 50 souls fell victim to the Bloodlights before their sinister games were brought to a halt. During their last outing, an Englishman infiltrated their ranks and killed the Bloodkeeper, avenging the death of his wife, who had been murdered during one of their trials. Soon after, his disciples came forward, claiming to have been controlled by the Keeper's amulet, alleging that it had supernatural powers. No such amulet was ever recovered. After Pete explained everything, I sat in awe, dumbstruck by the whole ordeal. Had I relived that fateful night? Or did I time travel and help that man fulfill his goal? I may never know what happened that day, but one thing is certain, I will never visit another cemetery for as long as I live, just in case the ghost of the Bloodkeeper is still out there. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.